Jim Matthews has been completely right from the very beginning of this story, and there is so much evidence to support that being the reason why the entity had to personally ensure that he could not survive.
I looked at the notes and I could hear the music.
And the music just magically popped into your head. Doesn't that strike you as odd?
One of the most consistent things that we see from Jim Matthews, and the main reason why the entity is completely terrified of him, is that by nature, Jim Matthews is an incredibly analytical person. Like in this scene, he immediately takes note of how suspicious it is for a melody to pop into Jade's head that he has never heard in his entire life. The reason why this matters so much is that we know the entity is telepathic. This means he can not only take information from your brain, like what happened with Boyd and the photograph that he received from the kimono demon, but that he can also make you see things that are not actually physically present at that moment, like what happened to Randall with the cicadas at the ambulance trap. But it also means that he can insert melodies into Jade's brain because he wanted him to play the violin at the bottle tree, which we know because the man in yellow explicitly praises Jade's ability to play it so efficiently. But the main point here is that it means Jim Matthews was right, not only about playing the melody being a bad idea, which he said, but that he was also right about having his biggest fear, that this entire time Tabitha has been experiencing manipulation specifically from the entity to serve his obviously evil goals.
She heard voices and she tried to murder our child.
Those things happened once we got here, but my dream, I was a kid.
I was just thinking about this dream I had when I was a little girl.
About the dream.
There was this boy, all dressed in white.
In this scene, we see why the entity was so desperate to remove the influence of Jim Matthews from Tabitha's life. He is the only person in this entire town who points out obvious similarities between her situation with the others who have been successfully manipulated by the entity. Because when you think about it, both Elgin and Boyd's wife were also sent visions and dreams just like Tabitha. And guess what? The visions were meant to groom them and prepare them for committing these evil acts in the town. But most importantly, both of them were directly manipulated into believing that if I just do this one specific thing, everyone in the town will be freed. But of course, it was always a deception from the very beginning, just like any rational person would immediately know from the ridiculous premise that each of them were being fed.
If those kids made the tree, then those messages in the bottles, they have to matter.
We don't even know who put them there.
No, Miranda knew those bottles were important.
There's something there.
Of
There
course,
has to be something
there has
there.
to.
And this is why the entity is determined to remove Jim Matthews' influence from Tabitha's life. He is the only person in the entire town who ever pushes back against the obvious delusions. Like, think about this. Now that Jim Matthews is dead, Tabitha is literally just surrounded by a bunch of yes men. There's not a single person in her life at this point in the story that is going to be challenging whatever quest is given to her in the upcoming seasons. And make no mistake about it, that is exactly what the entity wanted.
They always take you different places, but my mother said this one was special, that it would take her to the tower, to the children. The boy in white was trying to tell Christopher that to save the children, he would have to go through the tree. I told my mother what the boy in white said.
Even at this point in the story, most of the community still has not made the connection that Tabitha has already been successfully deceived multiple times in the show.
Eloise said that's where my mother went that night. She went to save the children locked in the tower.
You said Eloise.
She was so small. While I fell into pieces, there wasn't much left.
Like, think about this. When Tabitha reached the lighthouse, we saw something that we should have known from the very beginning. There were as many children locked in that tower as the chances of Fatima's demonic baby who made her kill people and drinks human blood for sustenance, leading us home. That is, of course, to say 0. But there was actually someone, or more accurately, something waiting for her when she arrived. The boy in white.
They're in the diner right now, was trying to figure out what it means that my mom got out.
What do you think it means?
Honestly, I don't think it means anything. This would make us suffer is to give us hope. Maybe that's why I let her out.
Victor's memories have been repeatedly manipulated by the entity to ensure that Tabitha stays on the right path. That's why the origin of where Victor actually learned about the children and the bottle tree keeps changing. The first time, it was his sister who told him about it. The second time, it was his mother. This means that Jim Matthews once again has been proven correct. That Tabitha is obviously being played, just like Sarah, just like Elgin, and of course, just like Boyd's wife.
You're on a bus. Where were you going?
I was going to bet on the ponies.
Is it a charter bus?
You ask a lot of questions.
Here we see a display of why the entity has so much hatred for Jim Matthews. His questioning nature effortlessly breaks down the entity's obvious deceptions, and therefore it also threatens the extremely elaborate quest that he has created specifically for Tabitha. And there's many clues for this being the case, like how the sacrificed children's clothing obviously does not match up with the time period that they would have been sacrificed in. To me, this is yet another sign that these children have been working with the entity all along to design the quest together.
You know why the phone is off the wall? The voice on the other end said his name was Thomas. Something here knows things about us. Did you know Christy's fiance was on that bus? What if all this was designed just to see how we react?
A lot of people in this community underestimate and downplay Jim Matthews' intelligence when the entity himself literally designates eliminating it as being a top priority for him. Like, even up to now in the current storyline, Jim Matthews is the only townsperson to have ever realized that Marielle's introduction directly means that they are being specifically selected by a clearly intelligent being, as opposed to their arrival in the town being some sort of natural occurrence, which, once again, it obviously isn't.
We heard a voice on the radio, me and Donna, and whoever it was, he knew my name. And I'm looking around and I'm seeing a lot of people pushed to their edge. You ever wonder if maybe that's the point?
What are you talking about?
In this scene, the writers give us yet another demonstration of how Jim Matthews is easily able to dismantle the exterior and presentation of Fromville and completely stab right through to the very core of its existence. Like here, Jim Matthews tells us exactly what goal the town exists to fulfill. The entire point is to push people into their most extreme state of desperation, to torture them for so long and exhaust them to the point where they are willing to do anything just to make the pain stop. Because it's only at that point that they've been pushed to their absolute limits and completely broken with despair when they get to a point where they can no longer see a way out of their suffering, that they would be willing to do something as evil as, I don't know, making a deal to sacrifice their children to the entity in order to gain immortality? After all, as Jim Matthews already informed us of multiple times, all of this is by design. But watch this video next, because what's been happening to Boyd specifically is beyond crazy.